A few years ago, a person could open their banking app, see $10,000 sitting in savings, and feel something close to relief. No debt collectors, no missed rent. No panic if the car broke down, just cash, safe cash. That feeling still exists today, maybe even more than before. People are exhausted. They want certainty. They want one part of their life that feels under control. So they build an emergency fund. They keep adding to it. They watch the balance grow, and that is exactly where the trap begins, because the number on the screen is staying the same. The buying power is not. A traditional savings account may pay 0.07%, maybe 0.1% if the bank is feeling generous. That sounds small, but small feels harmless. The danger is that inflation does not arrive all at once. It arrives quietly, inside grocery aisles, utility bills, insurance renewals, and rent notices that are suddenly higher than last year. A father stands in a supermarket aisle holding the same basket he bought 12 months ago. Eggs, bread, chicken, detergent, coffee. Last year it cost $82. Now it costs $104. Nothing dramatic happened. No emergency, no crash, just erosion. And that is why this is so dangerous. The account balance still looks stable. The bank still tells you your money is growing. The app still shows the same reassuring number in green. Yet every month, your money buys a little less. You think you are preserving your future. The system is quietly shaving pieces off it, and there is another layer most people never see. While your money is sitting there earning almost nothing, the bank is using that same cash very differently. That is where the real story begins. Banks understand something most people do not. People do not judge their savings account by what it can buy. They judge it by whether the number is bigger than last month. That is why a person can feel proud watching a savings account rise from $15,000 to $16,000. Even while the actual purchasing power of that money is falling in the background, the balance went up. Their life got more expensive faster. A decade ago, a family might have needed $3,000 a month to cover the basics: rent, groceries, gas, insurance, a phone bill, maybe one small dinner out. Today, that same family may need $4,500 or more just to maintain the exact same standard of living. Nothing improved. The apartment is not bigger. The car is older. The grocery cart is lighter. Yet the cost keeps climbing. That creates a contradiction that feels impossible at first. People are saving more money than they used to, yet they feel less secure than ever. Because they are. A savings account paying 0.1% interest, while inflation runs at 2.5%, 3% or higher, creates a silent gap. On paper, the account appears to be growing. In reality, it is losing ground every year. That 2-4% gap sounds small until you stretch it across time. Leave $50,000 in a low-yield account for 10 years, and the balance may barely move. Meanwhile, the cost of replacing a roof, buying a used car, paying for childcare, or covering 6 months of unemployment may rise far faster. You still have the money. You just need more of it to survive. That is the hidden tax nobody votes on. A pensioner opens a renewal notice for home insurance. It is up another 18%. He walks to the kitchen table, sits down, and starts crossing things off a handwritten list. Fewer dinners out. Delay the dental work. Cancel the cable package. He is not reckless. He is not irresponsible. He is simply being squeezed from both sides at once. His savings are standing still while his life keeps getting more expensive. And here's where the official story becomes dangerous. People are told that inflation is normal, healthy even. 2% inflation is often described as a sign of a functioning economy. What they are not told is that wages do not always rise with it. Interest on savings rarely rises with it fast enough. And the people hit first are usually the most conservative: retirees, cash savers, families with emergency funds, people who did exactly what they were told to do. The speculator can sometimes outrun inflation. The cautious person often absorbs it directly. That is why some of the safest-looking households are actually the most exposed. They have money in the bank, but no plan for what happens when that money quietly stops protecting them. And while they are watching their purchasing power disappear one grocery trip at a time, the bank holding their deposits is doing something very different with that same pile of cash. The relationship feels backwards once you see it clearly. You hand the bank your money because you want safety. The bank takes that same money and turns it into risk. Your savings account is not sitting in a vault with your name on it. It is being lent out, invested, packaged into loans, and used to support a system designed to earn far more than the fraction of a percent you are receiving. A bank may pay you 0.1% on your savings account, then turn around and lend that money out on a credit card charging 22%, a car loan at 8%, or a mortgage above 6%. Same money, different reality. That spread is not a side effect, it is the business model. A woman misses one credit card payment by a few days and gets hit with a late fee, a penalty rate, and a lower credit score. Across town, the bank holding her savings is advertising financial wellness while earning double-digit returns on revolving debt. The person carrying the risk gets punished. The institution managing the money gets rewarded. That is the hidden role underneath modern banking. The safest behavior for the individual is often the most profitable behavior for the bank. The more cash you leave sitting idle, the more funding they have. The less interest they pay you, the wider their margin becomes. People imagine banks want financially independent customers. In reality, banks often benefit more from customers who are just stable enough to keep depositing money, but not stable enough to escape the cycle of fees, debt, and low returns. Then there is the deeper contradiction. Most people think their bank account means they still have their money. Legally and mechanically, that is not entirely true. When you deposit money into a bank, it becomes the bank's liability to you. You become an unsecured creditor. The cash is no longer physically yours in the way people imagine. That distinction sounds technical until something breaks. During bank runs, financial crises, or temporary freezes, people discover the difference between ownership and access very quickly. The account still exists. The statement still shows the balance. The account existed. Access did not. In 2008, people lined up outside banks in Britain, Iceland, and parts of Europe, believing they would simply withdraw their savings and go home. Some could not. In Cyprus, in 2013, depositors found themselves facing withdrawal limits, frozen transfers, and partial losses on balances above insured thresholds. The money was there on paper. The rules changed faster than people could react. A man stands outside a branch before sunrise, refreshing his banking app over and over. The screen still says he has $48,000. The ATM says daily limit exceeded. The teller says come back tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. That is the moment people realize they never cared about the number in the account. They cared about access, and access is not guaranteed in the way most people assume, which creates a new problem. Once people start realizing that too much cash in one place can become its own risk, they often overcorrect. They keep saving, keep piling money into checking and savings, and call all of it an emergency fund, even when most of it has no purpose at all. There is a point where being responsible quietly turns into being trapped. A person starts with a reasonable goal, 3 months of expenses, then 6, then maybe a little extra for safety. Then another year passes. Headlines get worse, layoffs spread, prices keep rising. The emergency fund grows from $10,000 to $20,000, then $30,000, then $50,000. The logic feels sound the entire time. More cash means more security. Until one day, the person realizes they are sitting on years of expenses in an account earning almost nothing, while every major cost in life keeps moving further away. The down payment got larger, the cost of college rose, the monthly rent climbed. The house they wanted is now out of reach. They were saving the whole time, and somehow they still fell behind. That is the over-saving trap. Not because saving is wrong, because undefined fear has no finish line. If a person never decides what the emergency fund is actually for, the number can keep growing forever. Job loss, medical bill, car repair, family crisis. Those are emergencies. A flash sale is not an emergency. Christmas is not an emergency. A vacation booked after a stressful month is not an emergency. Neither is replacing a working car just because the new model feels safer. That line matters because people who keep too much money in checking and savings often end up using it for things they never planned. Visible money changes behavior. A couple sits at the kitchen table late at night. They have been careful for years. No major debt. No reckless spending. Then one of them opens the banking app and sees a large balance. Suddenly the conversation changes. Maybe they deserve the bigger vacation. Maybe the kitchen remodel can happen now. Maybe the truck can wait until next year, but maybe not. The money starts to feel available simply because it is visible. That is not weakness. It is human psychology. Researchers have found that people spend differently depending on where money sits. Cash in checking feels easy to use. Money hidden in retirement accounts, investment accounts, or separate savings buckets feels harder to touch. Distance creates discipline. Visibility creates temptation. And there's another contradiction buried inside this behavior. People think large cash balances make them calmer. In reality, large visible balances often create more anxiety. They start checking the account every day. They worry about market headlines. They fear making the wrong move. They become afraid to invest, afraid to spend, afraid to commit. Too much cash can create paralysis. A woman keeps $80,000 in a traditional savings account because she wants to feel safe. 3 years later, she still has the money, yet she is now paying higher rent, higher insurance, higher medical costs, and higher grocery bills. She feels poorer than when she started, not because she lost money in a crash, because she lost time. That may be the most expensive loss of all. The goal is not to eliminate cash. Cash is still necessary. It is what gets you through layoffs, broken transmissions, emergency flights, and bad months. The danger comes when every dollar is treated like emergency money. Because when all money is emergency money, none of it has a job. And that is where the people who adapt begin to separate themselves from the people who stay stuck. They stop thinking in terms of one giant pile of cash. They start building layers. The people who handle uncertainty best usually do one thing differently. They separate money by mission. Instead of keeping everything in one giant account, they build layers of liquidity. One layer for immediate danger, one layer for medium-term stability, one layer for growth. That changes the emotional pressure immediately. A family with $40,000 sitting in one checking account sees every dollar as available. A family with $10,000 in emergency cash, $15,000 in a higher yield reserve account, and the rest in longer-term investments sees clear boundaries. One pile invites panic and impulse. Separate buckets create clarity. The first layer is simple: immediate access cash for true emergencies. Rent, food, utilities, a car repair, a plane ticket because a family member is in the hospital. This is the money that needs to be available fast. Even if the power is out, even if markets are closed, delayed. For some people, that may be 1 month of expenses. For others, it may be 3. The point is not perfection. The point is survival. Then comes the second layer. This is where many people make a costly mistake. They keep medium-term cash in the same low-yield account as their emergency money because they want everything in one place. That convenience can become expensive. Money for future tax bills, home repairs, insurance deductibles, a planned move, or 6 to 12 months of living expenses does not always need to sit in a traditional savings account earning almost nothing. This is where higher-yield savings accounts, money market funds, short-term treasury funds, or short-duration certificates of deposit often enter the picture, not because they are magical, not because they eliminate risk, because they pay people something for giving up a little convenience. A man leaves $25,000 in a traditional savings account for 5 years because he likes seeing all his money in one place. Another man keeps the same emergency cushion in cash, but moves the rest into a higher yield account paying 4% or 5%. 5 years later, the second man has not become rich. He has simply bled less. That is an important distinction. Most people do not need a miracle. They need fewer silent losses. Then there is the third layer, longer-term money that may not be needed for years. This is where people often face the hardest emotional shift because it requires accepting a different kind of risk. Keeping all long-term money in cash feels safe until 10 years pass. Then the person realizes they avoided short-term volatility only to absorb long-term erosion instead. A person staring at a stock market chart during a bad month feels fear immediately. A person losing purchasing power in cash feels almost nothing. One risk is loud. The other is silent. And people consistently underestimate silent risk because there is no dramatic moment attached to it. No headline. No red warning sign. Just a slow narrowing of options year after year. The people who adapt understand that liquidity is not one thing. It is a ladder. The lower rungs are about access. The higher rungs are about preserving future purchasing power. Miss one rung, and life becomes unstable. Miss all of them, and the emergency fund that was supposed to protect you can quietly become the reason you stay stuck. This is usually the moment people ask the wrong question. They ask, where should I put all my money? The better question is, what job does each dollar need to do? Money for next week's rent should not be treated the same way as money for next year's property taxes. Money for a possible layoff should not be treated the same way as money that may not be touched for 10 years. Once that becomes clear, the pressure starts to change. A checking account becomes a tool instead of a storage unit. An emergency fund becomes defined instead of endless. Higher yield accounts become a buffer instead of a gamble. Long-term investments become a way to protect future purchasing power instead of something to fear. and the system starts losing some of its leverage over you. Because the bank depends on confusion, it depends on people leaving large balances in low-yield accounts forever. It depends on people mistaking visibility for safety. It depends on people feeling too overwhelmed, too uncertain, or too afraid to move. The irony is that many people do not need a dramatic financial overhaul. They need one afternoon. One afternoon to calculate what a real emergency actually costs. One afternoon to separate short-term cash from long-term money. One afternoon to compare what the bank is paying them against what it is charging everyone else. That is when the illusion starts to break. A person opens their banking app and sees $20,000 sitting in a savings account earning almost nothing. For the first time, they no longer feel comfort. They feel friction. They realize that every extra dollar sitting there without a purpose is quietly shrinking. They realize the safest-looking option was not actually safe. They realize the bank was making decisions with their money long before they ever did. And that leaves them with a choice. Keep treating all cash like protection and watch it slowly lose value in plain sight. Or build a system where every dollar has a role. Every layer has a purpose. And safety is measured not by the number on the screen, but by how much control that money still gives you when the rules change.